Hello guys, my name is Amit Sani and I welcome you in this Daily Hindu Analysis video. In the morning these videos come, in the evening the MCQ lessons they come, and yesterday's MCQ lesson will be uploaded by today. So let's start. Many articles are there in the newspaper today and on very crucial topics, and the facts, if we get time then we will discuss them, and these are smaller one, and we take questions on the basis of those facts in the evening. So both the lessons you need to follow here. Let's start the discussion. Pocket News app is running on Google Play, and regarding these courses you will get the description below the video, and you can call on these numbers for all these courses, and chat section is available on the website here. PDF you will get here on two sources, actually three sources. Telegram channel of StudyIQ and Telegram channel of mine you will find there on this Facebook group, and PDF is also uploaded on this Facebook group. So you can send me a request and I would approve that, and this is the link for my Telegram channel. First article important for GS paper 3 and 2 also. Rupee is falling. You see it has touched 72 mark, and it's a concerning issue because when we talk politically, then always political parties, when they are in power then they say something, when they are not in power then they say just opposite for that issue. But obviously it has its own consequences, and most of the time when the value is declining for any country's currency, then there are question marks on its efficiency and the trade too. But it supports exporters, as we all know, because a declining rupee, a declining currency, always a devalued currency always supports the exporters. But there are conditions too, means it will support the exporter and it will make India's exporters more competitive, but the raw material needs, the labor needs, and the issue of business, that is the basis of these export businesses, and the respective policies and the important schemes which are going on regarding the exporters, the credit facilities and all. So these are also not going in a great way. So that's why we will have to see that certainly they will take the advantage of it or not. But if we see the emerging economies like Turkish economy, Brazilian economy, South Africa's economy, they all are struggling, and they are all respective currencies like Turkish lira and Brazilian real, South Africa's rand, Mexican peso, they all are struggling a lot. And Argentine peso, that is losing the most, because there is a certain reason that their economy is struggling a lot at this time. So that's the issue. But the Chinese yuan issue, you see two things as I explained to you in the MCQ lesson: depreciation and devaluation. Depreciation happens automatically and devaluation happens intentionally. So that's the issue. Now, Chinese devaluation, as America says that China is a currency manipulator. So that's a real problem, because China's economy is export-led economy and it wants to support its exporter more and more. But right now the problem is of demand. There is no demand in the world market. So that's why China is struggling a lot, and it is all putting its stakes on domestic consumption. Okay, so it is more like the India's condition today, that we are dependent, our growth is led by domestic consumption, because the markets are huge, the populations are huge. So that's the reason. But certainly it is distorting the world market in a sense, because it has devalued its currency, and that is supporting the exporter. So that's why Trump says that we do not need Chinese people, we do not need Chinese market, we do not need Chinese companies there. And in a very harsh voice, Trump says that we will debar China from everywhere. So China has become the biggest issue for Americans. That's a new information, and it's a very fierce attack on China and its economy and its policy by Mr. Trump 2 days back. Now, when these emerging markets are struggling, then it is obvious that some impact will be coming on their respective currencies, and some issues are also there that US may face a recession in the future very soon. So nothing is going good in the terms of world trade, the world economy, and the growth in emerging countries especially. Developed countries, they are struggling, but the more impact will come on the developing economies. So this is all a kind of a small picture of the currencies and their respective values right now, because bigger article will come on those issues, because 72 mark is it's a unprecedented numbers. You see, we are having historical high levels of forex reserves, like $430 billion are there. So we are not in an alarming situation, although rupee is touching 72 mark, and that is highest till now, but still it is not an alarming situation, because our current account deficit is 0.7% if the data is true, because we always have to condition put this condition these days. If the data is true, then current account deficit is close to 0.7%. So that's a very much manageable number, and plus the $430 billion of forex reserve. So that's a positive condition. But rupee touching 72 is a unique thing in these times, and the inflation is also low. So it's a very unique phase for Indian economy, because normally these combinations are not present. But this is happening, that low inflation, low current account deficit, and this much forex reserve, and rupee touching 72 mark. So that's the situation. Okay, next. On the wrong side, it is regarding the journalism issue, which is facing a crisis in this country, because whatever we see, it is all advertisement, it is all a loud voice, it is all manipulating anchors, agenda running anchors, and so third class these people are, these these mainstream news media anchors, that they are just intentionally destroying this country. You see, they have become so open, they have become so shameless, that every title of these debates, these agendas which start every evening at 6 o'clock and they go till 11 p.m. So every title of these people, these debates, that shows their real intention, and in which way they are working, the way they are running agendas, and the way they are manipulating people's mind and the brainwashing people. So it's an alarming situation, and it is way dangerous than any other thing in this country. Economy, polity, federalism, decision making, and everything you leave aside, the right information is the basis of all the progress. If the right information is not there, then it is not an optional thing, because it's a mandatory thing that we must have right information, because without right information there will be no trust, and this country, or maybe the whole world, can be devastated. Because if the trust is not there, there can be no cooperation, there can be no dealing, there can be no understanding, there can be no progress, and everything will be suspicious, and all progress will have a very, very dooming fate. So that is why Press Council of India, PCI, it's a statutory, quasi-judicial and autonomous body, and whose mandate is to protect and reinforce a professional and objective media that is working in a shocking way, and its responsibility becomes so large and in a way extremely important in this time, where India is currently witnessing a disturbing debasement of standards in journalism, and the PCI's legal and ethical obligation has never been so critical. You see, it has its own history, and always it was not on a same level. Sometimes during the Punjab militancy, it supported the free press there, and people were truthfully and impartially reporting from some areas, and PCI was supportive at that time. But during the Ayodhya agitation issue, there were some allegations of partiality on PCI. Right now, whatever it said during the ongoing times, and in these issues of lynching, and in these issues of Kashmir becoming a UT, it has supported the government openly. It has given those same logics which the government is giving, and there is no action against these third class media houses which are running these agendas, distorting every information. You see, information, so it's a very problematic phase, and contributors are the mainstream people, and here this is being a statutory body, so it has its own responsibility, so it must fulfill that responsibility. And Article 14 and 19, they are cited by Anuradha Basin. She is executive editor of Kashmir Times, and she has said that whatever happens, truth always helps. And we all know that if any decision is good or it is bad, it is based on its consequences, but the right information is must, because right information always helps. If it is a wrong decision, then right changes can be brought up. If it is a right decision, then it will give the learning, it will give the understanding to other authorities, other people, and it will be working like a model for others too. So journalism has the biggest responsibility here, and the propagation of right information is a must in the democracy. Otherwise, there is no meaning of Article 14 and 19, as these both are cited by Anuradha Bhasin. Means she says that she claimed in the court that it's a wrong move based on these issues, and this restriction cannot stay there, because there is no problem in giving right information, and there is no security issue in right information there, because they are managing the issue, forces are there, and government itself claims that things are under their control. So if the things are there under their control, if the normalcy is there, then why these curbs are there? This is purely a logical issue, and any layman can understand the ongoing thing. So that's why this article is based on PCI's working, and it has its very important responsibility that it must fulfill it in these times. Otherwise, we certainly will be doomed for a very dangerous future, and very soon it will happen. Now the next article for GS paper 2, importantly, all the things are well discussed. A simple important point is of the president's rule. Here K. Venkat Ramanan said that we are a unique system, quasi-federal system. It has its own responsibilities, it has its own requisites, and the cooperation is the first requisite there. Now, when in any state there is any kind of disturbance, any kind of misgovernance issue, any kind of crisis, chaos, financial problems, or any constitutional problem is there, then center has a responsibility to save from all negative conditions and all negative developments and maintain the normalcy there. And state is not an appendage of the center. It is obviously a supreme unit in its sense, and it has its own responsibility, and it maintains a sanctity of the nation too. So that's the case, and that's why we are a unique nation. We have adopted this central bias in our polity, but that doesn't mean that we take over the absolute functions and the power of a state. We cannot do that, and that's why the federal feature is the basic feature of the constitution. Now, whatever happened in 370, that is well discussed, but nobody discussed the president's rule imposition in December 18, and in that time also the Hindu was reporting that it's a very wrong precedent. Instead of going for elections, instead of going for a proper normalcy and taking people with the process, involving them in the process, they are imposing the president's rule, and they are extending it for a particular time. Now, even after that, they had a responsibility to conduct elections, but when we connect these links, then we understand the whole issue there, that what just happened and in which way things are developing and why there is a huge problem there. First, they made a government, the central ruling party, the BJP, they actually made a government with PDP there. Then they only withdrew the support, means they are ruling in the center, and they were there also, so they only withdrew the support. Next, then they put many allegations there. So that was a political thing, but it has a constitutional arrangement for all those things also. Next, they go for president's rule under 356, which is the most controversial issue till date in our polity. Means it has, and the Bihar's case of imposing president's rule multiple times, it is well known. So it's heavily misused a provision. But here, After this fall of this government, they go for this assembly resolution. Then president's rule is working, and president's rule means what? It means indirectly center is ruling there. The governor de facto is the agent of the central government only. Okay, so that's a clear issue, and we have kept this provision even after our independence because we wanted to have some control over the state by the center. So that was the reason. Otherwise, it was the British provision, and the Governor General wanted to keep the control on provinces. So that's why governor post was there, and that was opposed heavily at that time. And when this constitutional debates were going on, then also this had some discussion, but we stayed with that. So there is a central bias, but imposing president's rule means you bring the normalcy again, and it's a temporary phase. It is not the phase where you take the absolute power in your hand and you make some fundamental changes with the state. And it does not mean that you do those things where state assembly, if it would have been there, then it would have never decided in this way. So you do not go for those decisions there, although you can do that. That is legally allowed, but it is ethically very, very wrong because people are not having any say there. So what just happened? They withdrew their support, then they imposed president's rule there, and then they said Constituent Assembly, which was there in the starting, in this case of 370, Constituent Assembly was the phrase that was most important. Then they converted it into Legislative Assembly. And Legislative Assembly, which was not there, instead of that, Governor was there. So they said that whatever Governor says, that is the opinion of the state. Means you converted Constituent Assembly into Legislative Assembly, and which is not there, and you implied that Governor is the Legislative Assembly there. Means whatever Governor is deciding, Governor giving its opinion, that is the opinion of the Assembly there. And Assembly is the elected body, Governor is not. Means you take over the democratic part there, the representation there, and you say that whatever Governor is giving as an opinion, that is the opinion of the Kashmir's people. So that is the biggest problem in this case. That is the biggest legal problem in this case. And that's why maybe in judicial review, this may be nullified again because it is looking logically very, very wrong. Now, that means everything center is doing here. Center is the party, center is the stakeholder. Then the problem remains, and the problems component is also the BJP there. Now, BJP is ruling in the center, and it is deciding the case also. Means you are the party and you are the judge also. And now you are advertising it with your own supported media and with your own state machinery too. Now Article 3 empowers Parliament to create or divide states and alter their boundaries. Now you see, in all these cases, the advice of the state is necessary. Means it is necessary, it is mandatory that you communicate this issue to the state, and then the consent comes. Although it is not mandatory for the center to accept that, but that consent is very much necessary. But here that consent, who is giving? It is given by the governor there, and governor is not the elected person by the state people. So that's the problem here, and it is the bigger problem in J&K because J&K is a unique, J&K was a unique state. It had much more power than any other state of India. There, everything was to be approved by their state legislative assembly. But here there is no assembly, and you assumed the governor as the assembly there, ultimate opinion maker there, ultimate decision maker there. And this way you have implied that issue. So that means you have superseded the people's opinion there, people's representation there. And that's for sure that J&K Assembly would have never decided this way. And now because you wanted to impose some decision there, that's why you in a way cheated the constitutional system there. Because you imposed the president's rule there, and you knew that you would assume that power, and you never told this thing openly that you will do this kind of something, and that's why you are imposing the president's rule there, so that governor can decide in this case as J&K Assembly would have decided. So this is a kind of a trickery here, and that's why this whole issue is hailed as flawed by many scholars. So the same thing is said by the writer here. Now, legal fiction, as this line says, legal fiction is that whatever parliament or president does in respect of J&K, it is the state assembly or the state government that is actually doing it. Means you all assume this thing that J&K Assembly is doing whatever is happening, because governor is the assembly today, governor is the Kashmir people today, and whatever he opines, we have done according to that, because center has done it on the opinion of the state there, and state's opinion is governor's opinion today. Means governor has given its opinion, after that this 370 is revoked. So that's the problem. Now whatever happened with the 370, we know security concerns are there. Kashmir is having its a unique situation, has its unique problems there, and that's why we had to do in this way. But the bigger problem is of the federal feature. Federal feature is the basic feature there, and you cannot take it away. Bigger problem is that the way it is done, in this way you can do everything what you did with J&K with any other state. Means tomorrow, we can take an example here. Tomorrow, if central government wants to do this thing with any other state, take the example of West Bengal, they will say that some problems are there, and the center, whatever center is saying, state is not complying. So if there is a tussle between the center and the state, then governor, who is de facto the agent of the central government only, he or she would give this advice to the center that impose president's rule there. It is needed there, because the state is not run by the constitutional provisions, or the state is not complying with the center there. So this is a legitimate ground to impose the president's rule there. Then they will impose the president's rule, and then they can decide about something, about the fundamental laws there, about the fundamental decisions there. They may change all these things, and they may turn it to a union territory the way they did it with J&K, and J&K was much more powerful state. Other states are not that much powerful, so it can be easily done with other states also. Means any state you can turn a union territory into. So this trend is very dangerous, because there are many centralizing tendencies which are rising, that we have seen in the recent past, and that's why this example, this classical example, is very unique to understand, and that's very important that that all the scholars, all the authorities and all, they scrutinize this issue and they evaluate this issue, because it can lead to many problematic things. That's the issue of this article. Okay, so that's why the writer says this schema poses a real danger of the will of the people of the state, as decisions that a popular regime would never make may become possible under the president's rule. So president's rule has become a new tool for making the system more centralized and making the central government way more powerful than it was there in the past. So that's the issue there. Okay, so the writer says states must remain supreme because they have their own state list there, and if all these issues are taken over by the center with the way of president's rule, then it's a very dangerous thing. Okay, next article I have explained to you. Please go through the PDF once. This text you will understand that easily, because all things are well discussed in the past, but only issue was of that president's rule there. Okay, next, privacy no longer supreme. Here the article by Prasanna S is talking about a very important and extremely sensitive issue, which is related with the average person's life. Here he is reminding the 2 years, the decision which was taken 2 years back by the constitutional bench there. that privacy is the basic right, it's a natural right, and it is the constitutional right, and it's a basic feature also in the constitution. Nobody can take that away, even with the amendment. So that's why it was upheld, and that was one of the greatest decision of all times. Now, if in the name of national security or on some other legitimate grounds, if they want to bring some changes in the privacy issues, because the reasonable restriction issue is certainly there and the security concerns are also there. So the writer says that any law must pass three important tests. First test, that a legislative mandate must be there as they have it. Next, a legitimate state purpose must be there. So according to them, the purpose is certainly there. But we are discussing that some other important misuses can also be there, which are not discussed, well discussed, which are not communicated by the governments, and they want to create always a surveillance state, because in these times, present times, creating a surveillance state is much more useful for the governments who wants to take all the power under them. So that's a different issue. But here, the legitimate state purpose must be there. Third, it must be proportionate. Such state action, both in its nature and extent, must be necessary in a democratic society. So that's the most important point. Means a democratic society must be bolstered with that move. It does not mean that in the name of national security or in the name of reasonable restriction there, you are in a way undermining the democracy itself, and you are making democracy a weaker one in the future. So that should not happen. It should be much more secure after your decision. It must be much more stronger after the action there. So these three important tests are there. Now he is talking about the K.S. Puttaswamy case there. Here, that important judgment fundamentally changed the way in which the government viewed its citizens' privacy, both in practice and prescription. Why this case is much more important? Because we do not have a robust cyber protection law and the data protection law. Now, data is it's a kind of a new oxygen for the system, for the people, for whole world. And our life is becoming more and more virtual today, more and more digital today, more and more internet based today. First, we need to talk about the possible future there. We know there will be a future, and for sure there will be a future which is only talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, digital revolution, e-governance, and everything is added with a prefix of E. So that means nothing will be out of the reach of internet and the digitization. Everything, your medical history, your work life, your financial transactions, whatever you are buying, where you are staying, what you are using, which appliance you are using, in which way you are profiling yourself, what are your likes, what are your dislikes, everything will be available on the internet if that privacy is interfered with. Okay, and you know that Aadhaar card is a prime thing for the government, and they want to implement it anywhere. But Supreme Court put this restriction, and that was really important and needed. Otherwise, if you add everything with the Aadhaar card, means your financial transactions, your social media profile, your mobile SIM connection, your everything, if it is connected with the Aadhaar issue, then government would need only one thing, that is Aadhaar, and they can know about anything in your life. Anything, even your smallest of the financial transaction, they can know about. So if their intention is good, then they can manage all things in the best way. But there is the biggest question: are the governments today in this world, are they totally honest? Are they most idealistic governments? No, a clear big no. That's the reason. Their intentions, their work, their way, their particular desires and needs, they are highly questionable. And that's why there is a problem in India today. In India, there is a blind support for all the moves by the governments, although they have attached everything, they have attached a national security issue with everything. And that's the reason that most people are with them in all the decisions, but always the wise people, the scholars, and the people who know the systems of economy, polity, and security issues and everything, and especially these futuristic topics, they will raise questions because things are highly questionable here. They all want, all the governments in the world today, they all want to create a surveillance state. Maybe not in open, but indirectly they want to do that. It is the people who have to decide about those things. First, they need to know about those things. So that's why the law is must, and all this knowledge is a must, because this world will be controlled by this artificial intelligence, the data, the important these processing units, and the internet, digitization, everything. Okay, the manual control will be very, very less, and the governments, they will need minimal things to control everything. And these identities, these particular biological IDs and all, and your unique IDs are the specific tool to control all these things. Okay, suppose an example is there. If a company is growing very fast and it's a very much a devastating company for other smaller ones, and it has its nexus with the ruling party, ruling government, and in that country there are issues of unique IDs and all, and they are attaching it with every important aspect of the life, means the social media, means the services that you use, mobile SIMs, connections, everything, the unique ID is applicable there. If that company creates a nexus and the government is also corrupt, we are taking a case as we are supposing here. So what that company can do, that company can take all the information, and in the name of a leak, the government would provide that company everything. And what it will do then, it will take the data from the people, and it will take the data, the sensitive and secretive data and the plans from other companies also, and it can make its own plans accordingly, and it will actually be able to defeat all other companies in a way, because it knows about all their plans, because in their computers it can barge, because the authorities, they can go anywhere. As in December 18, the Ministry of Home Affairs, they have allowed these 10 central agencies that they can barge into any personal computer in the territory of India, and they can know about any other information, and they can go for any kind of decryption, encryption, decryption, we all know about that. So they can decrypt all the information. So this way, when we were discussing that example, means that company is gonna rule that country very, very soon, because it holds everything, and the government and the corrupt government is with that company. And this way they can, the government created a surveillance state, and that is the key for the success of that company. So this way they both are going to rule the whole country there, and people will not be able to do anything, because their all moves, their all talks, their all motives, plans, everything is on surveillance, and they can be tackled very easily by the government and that any other beneficiary as a company. So that's the case. So these are the extremely dangerous possibilities. This way the market will be distorted. This way the state will be controlling the lives of the people, and this will not be a free life, means the actual freedom, de facto freedom, will not be there. So these are the possible misuses, which are the extremely dangerous misuses of the surveillance state. So that's why we need to understand that we need to scrutinize, we need to evaluate these all provisions there. Now, this judgment was a greatest one, and it decided all the important provisions, and it said that there must be a privacy commission, so that the responsibility and the accountability factor is there, and people can submit their grievances and their complaints, and the accountability must be there. So the fairy tale would have been the story of the last 2 years. This would have been the possibility, but it was not. Actually, just opposite decisions were taken, and all these directions and all these aspirations and all these guidances were heavily ignored. And the decisions which were taken, they are giving evidence that this country is under a lot of stress, a pressure, or you may say danger, because it is being created a surveillance state here in a way. What are the evidences? These are the evidences. As I told you, 10 central agencies in the name of security, they are given unbridled power to intercept, monitor and decrypt any information, because ministry is gonna authorize them, and obviously they want to get all the information. So that's the case. Next, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting had floated a tender for social media monitoring hub. Social media monitoring hub means what are the possible misuses? Suppose a person doesn't like any government's move. If the person is raising voice against that, if the person is exposing any corruption, if the person is telling the people or educating the people about that particular dangerous consequence of any policy, then they will say that it is dangerous for the country. They will put a label of anti-national person on that person, and today they can take that person under the UAPA provisions, and these are draconian provisions under UAPA bill, and that's why it was extremely dangerous, a thing that without much discussion they passed that law. So these are the possibilities there. Now, when you have provisions in the law that you can take action against any person, and if this thing is possible, that social media monitoring hub will be there, or the social media surveillance program will be executed. Today it is not executed till now, but if in future, if it is allowed, then there can be a different India. Any person can be picked up by the authorities, any person can be put on surveillance, and they can know, and they can go behind any person. So it will create a environment of extreme fear, and obviously some fear is still there because people are targeting. Today it is done by trollers, but tomorrow it can be done by state itself, because they will say that there are extreme dangers of the security, and these people are trying to connect with the terrorists and all, and they are hatching some plans of some conspiracies going on, because you cannot ask questions that what kind of conspiracy, what kind of plans that person is making, what is the evidence. You cannot ask for evidence because it's the state, and if the state is trying to create a surveillance state, then these things will be there for sure, because in all the models, all the available models in the future, in the history, these things were done. So we have the example, we have the learnings, we have the experience in this world, but still we are supporting every dangerous move today. So that's the problem here. Income tax department has its own project inside for that, and that's a different case. That's the economic case, financial cases, and they need some surveillance there because the corruption is there. But you see, they have these projects, they have these plans, but still the country is moving in the same way. Inequality is there. Rich is becoming richer and richer. The poor is becoming poorer and poorer. Even they said about after demonetization, they said about these things that we will achieve all these goals, and the rich you will see crumbling, and they are not able to stand. They are trembling in fear and all, and they are gonna lose everything, and the money will come to the poorest person, and that life of the poor person will totally changed. So these kind of rhetorics are always made. Here the same rhetorics are made that it's a need of the security, and it will be a very secure nation after we will allow all these things, and it will create a very better India. But they are only showing us the positive side of it. The negative sides are extremely dangerous, and that's why we need to talk about these issues. Okay, now this is evident from this year's economic survey, as it commends the government for having been able to sell and monetize the vehicle owners data in the Vahan database. The database was taken by government. The database was there with them. The way they have Aadhaar database, they have all the databases, and many times we have seen in the newspaper that data leak was there, but these issues are never reported in the mainstream media. They will never talk about these issues, but these data leaks are there. And when somebody will ask the question, that somebody will go to the court, then they will say that we had released some information about that. Maybe it didn't appear in the media, but it was there in some small newspaper. So data leaks were there, and here it is not only about the data leaks, it is about the deliberate step to sell the data. Means they are earning money out of your data. Have you allowed them? No. It was there with the state, and deliberately they have earned money on that issue. Have they given that money to you? No. Because they are investing in the developmental issues. They also talk about developmental issues, that we are creating highways and all, and on the highways they are taking toll from every vehicle there. So I don't know what kind of a development model is that they take data from people without their allowance, and they are selling this data to some other company or something like that. And they today openly are commending this move, that it's a great thing that they did it, and it was reported in economic survey of this country, the most important document there. So that's why it's a problematic thing. Okay, so the script is still on the table, and they have not decided finally about those things, those provisions, and we are still to have a data protection law and the cyber law there. And that is also very questionable thing, that why it is being delayed, because every day we need those things, and this is being delayed, and there is no discussion on those things. We have discussion on every nonsensical issue, but we are not having any discussion on these mainstream media channels regarding these sensitive topics. So that's why it's a problematic thing, and these questions are raised. And we all know data is the new oil, and so the dividend must come to the people also, because the people's data is there, and if they are starting to sell these data, they are monetizing on those issues, then it's a problematic thing. And it is also problematic issue whom they are selling it, because it's a clear case of making these companies available all the information, all the sensitive information. They will profile your